Welcome, everyone. I'll formally introduce myself. I'm Anil Khwaja, Register Migration Agent and co founder Think High Consultants. We are very obliged and very thankful to Mr. Salman Faiz, who has helped us to arrange this webinar in association with NED University Alumni for Australia. So now we have audience, so we shall formally start this webinar. So let me just pull up my presentation and then I'll start explaining what we would be having in this webinar and the presentation. Alrighty, so first the rules for this session. Your question needs to be specific to the session. So as you know that we are here to know about the Australian permanent residency pathway, either through the general skill migration or student visas, or those who are already on a temporary visa and wanted to move to a permanent pathway within Australia. I shall be answering your question at the end. So whoever wanted to ask any question, they can put it on the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer each and every question, no matter how small that is, or if you want to ask directly through the mic and all, just let me know. I'll turn on your mic, I'll unmute you. There would be a quiz at the end. So I have taken a few questions from the session. Once we will be ending up the session, I'll be asking a few questions. If you give a right answer, we'll send you a goodie bag from Think High Consultants. Right. So that's me. I'm Anil Khwaja. I've already introduced myself. I'm a co-founder and director of Think High Consultants. So before we start, I'll just give you a quick brief about how we started Think High Consultant, what exactly we do, and then we'll start the formal. So let's start with the first and the foremost step. That's called the skill assessment. So most of us here, I believe, are engineers, and they all wanted to obviously migrate to Australia, or they believe that if they're already in Australia, have an engineering background, then what would be the steps to go further for the permanent residency? So the first step is to go with the skill assessment. So being an engineer, your skill assessment body is called Engineers Australia. Just like if you have heard about Pakistani Engineering Council back in Pakistan, or India has its own engineering council, similar to here, all the engineers being membered by Engineers Australia. So how to get the skill assessment from Engineers Australia? So there are a couple of pathways to which you can apply for a skill assessment. The first one is the Accredited Engineer Australia qualification. So if you fall under Washington Accord, Sydney Accord, Dublin Accord, you can apply for a skill assessment directly. You don't need to do any sort of long and lengthy paperwork. But where it comes to if you're not the part of these, then we can go with the competency development report. That's called the CDR, where we need to write 3 career episodes, along with there are some other summaries and other stuff needs to be right, and then needs to submit to the Engineers Australia. Now, the good part is Pakistan recently, I think 3-4 years back, have been a part of an Washington Accord full signatories. So lots of the newcomers, especially from the NED universities, starting from 2016, 2017 batch, they're all mainly eligible to apply for direct skill assessment without even writing the CDR. So that's quite fascinating for those who fall under the Washington Accord. Now, not all NED courses are the part of Washington Accord, but if you can see, there is a list of accredited courses available on PEC website where you can manage to see whether where the course is specifically accredited to Washington Accord or not. If it's there, then you can apply for a skill assessment without any SL. Other important information is that you can also apply for 476 visa. That's called the 2 years work visa, specifically designed for those who fall under Washington Accord. There are a few conditions you need to meet, like your studies should be completed in last 2 years. So mainly this type of 476 visa is for the recent graduates who have recently finished, or maybe in last 2 years they have finished, they can apply for 476. Mostly the engineers who are been graduated more than 2 years, they need to write a competency development report. So we'll talk about this in detail, so exactly you know what needs to be done. Now, as I told earlier, there would be a couple of pathways. If you are from the applicants from Accredited Australia, you just need to submit the documents as per the basic checklist. Case officer is reserve the right to give you the nominated occupation. So sometimes what happens, even though if you're an accredited program holder, most of the time Engineers Australia gives you as an engineering technology skill assessment rather than going with the formal mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, whatever the majors you have taken in the engineering. They sometimes don't give you that one. Sometimes the Engineers Australia give you some sort of other options to offer. For instance, a telecom engineer can be a telecom network engineer. They can sometimes give the electronics engineer as well, because most of the engineering, specifically for the electronic side, we normally learn all the basics of what the electronics are. Then there are some other specific subjects for telecom and other engineering, electrical and those stuff. So that is generally on the second year or third year or fourth year of our studies. Now, what is the competency development report? So the checklist is that you need a passport, you need academic qualification, specific engineering is there, but those who have done Bachelor of Science in Engineering are also accepted, as far as you have minimum 3 years of education after your year 12. So for instance, if you have done intermediate and then you have done BSc in engineering, should be all good. You don't need to be itself called as a bachelor's of engineering, your qualification. Even BSc is all good. Minimum required is 6 each in IELTS, and if you can see, we have also given the equivalency. So lots of people these days do the PTE test, so that is 50 each they need to do if they're offshore. For onshore, those who are already on a student visa, they can, if they have done bachelor's or master's in last 2 years, they don't require to submit the PT or IELTS for specifically for the skill assessment. Your passport size photo needs to be the high resolution English, I have already told you, and it has to be in last 36 months. So lots of myth, there are lots of myth where you feel like that the IELTS or PT is only acceptable for last 2 years, but that's not true. For Australian immigration and also for the Engineer Australia, they're accepting last 36 months if you have done the IELTS or PT in last 36 months. So that is another plus point for those who have done, your PT and IELTS in last 36 months. They can still go with this CDR reports. Now, further, there is basic requirements. You must have an academic documents like bachelor's. If you have an employment, you need to have an experience letter along with a employment contract. Pay slips needs to cover the whole period. Bank statements, if they are available. Obviously, the tax documents are there. But those who are in a non-tax country like Dubai or Singapore, they need to then submit the bank statement in order to show that they have been paid properly to the bank accounts. Superannuation is mainly for Australian employment, but then provident funds or other superannuation in other countries, you need to submit those documents if available. Then obviously, as I told you, there are 3 career episodes you need to write. So all these 3 career episodes needs to be based on your qualification projects. If you haven't done much projects and you have worked on thesis, then you can also write an episodes based on your work experience. So for instance, if you have done 4 to 5 years of experience or even 1 or 2 years of experience, you can write the career episodes taking out some of the projects which you have done during the job. There is another requirement, it's called the CPD. CPD is the continuous progress development. This is specifically to see whether you are continuously, developing yourself in an engineering qualification. Lots of people have not started the jobs, or maybe they're not doing the job, they are in some other fields. But still, if you reading engineering books, or you have been involved in different alumni groups, or maybe you're helping juniors putting up the projects, or helping in any way to the engineering, that is also a part of CPD. So the formal qualification or formal experience is not just the CPD. Then there is last another summary statement that you need to write. There is a format for the summary statement given by the Engineers Australia. You just need to fill that pro forma. So it's pretty straightforward for those who are working as an engineer in any of the fields. Now, as we said, career episodes, if you're writing on a base of course or project or maybe experience one, you need to have your institution name or the employer name, the project name where you work, what are the timelines. If it's a semester one, you need to write which semester, supervisor name. And sometimes they do ask for an organization chart, that how many persons were part of the project. And specifically in Pakistan, normally the final year project has been dealt by 3 or 4 the colleagues, so you have to write all names. So even if one of your colleague have submitted the same project, at least it won't count as a plagiarism. Otherwise, if you won't declare, they may ban you for 1 year. So it's quite sensitive to put all the information rather than skipping it. Now, career episodes, obviously, as I told you, you can also put engineering activities, the how you have solved the problems and all, how and why it was done. So specifically what you have done, you need to mention. So generally we use I, the first noun, in order what I have done it in the project, not we have done it. So never use we or our, just use I, me, to ensure that what you have done is been projected on their career episodes. Then again, the figures and table needs to be of that project you have done it. Sometimes lots of people do a very common mistake. They copy paste from the Google. Recently, I have done a couple of cases where I have to go over the review where that XYZ client has done it. He has done a project in 2018, but the tables and schematic was 2020 of one of the machines which were recently introduced. So the forensic was done and he was banned for a year. Then we have to go with a formal review in order to get his ban lifted and then apply for another Engineer Australia skill assessment. So don't do such kind of mistakes where you are copy pasting or putting anything from the Google or anywhere on the web internet, and that leads to a 1 year ban. That we don't want either. So CPD, as I told you, it can be the timeline of the development as an engineer. So it can be anything. You must not need to have any gaps. So every single month you need to put and what you have done. So if you're reading books for the engineering, you can put that as a CPD, because lots of us who has passed the engineering like 8-9 years ago, they might be doing some formal jobs. But if you're not doing jobs, or you are still idle or doing some other stuff, then you need to put something close to engineering what you're doing it. Summary statement, as I told you, this is the pro forma. So you need to write details accordingly. So if it's a knowledge base, P1.1 is the paragraph of the episode you have written. So if you have written 1.1, whatever the paragraph you have written, you need to put the complete details, what exactly you have developed or what you have learned with that element. So every element needs to be precisely submitted into the summary. Then this is one of our successful cases we have done recently. I'll just run the customer review with us, and then we'll go further with the permanent residency pathway options, what visas we can apply.
Hello, I'm Nimrod. I received an unfortunate ban of 1 year by Engineers Australia, and I contacted ThinkHigher Consultants for a professional advice. They are one of the best consultants in Australia. They were always available to talk, kept me updated on the process. I will highly recommend them.
All right, so that was one of the unfortunate client who came to us. He had a 1 year ban. Then, as I told you, that what I've given the reference that we have to then work out within the Engineers Australia to ensure that he's meeting the requirements for the skill assessment. But ban for 1 year leads to a 1 year delay into your permanent residency pathway because eventually you cannot apply any other visa. Now let's come to the Australian visa programs, which mostly here everybody has came for. So we have couple of programs here in Australia. First is obviously a journalist skill migration, which you normally have heard from lots of people, the direct PR thing or permanent residency thing or the point testing, where you need to have certain amount of points. That all comes into the journal skill migration. Then another Australian visa program we have, it is student visa program. Everybody knows that you can come to Australia for a student visa, and then from the student visa you can have a permanent residency pathway. But again, I'll come through the visa programs if everybody can see the slides. So as I told you, student visa program is another pathway. Then you also have an employer migration program where you need to come up with an employer who can sponsor you in Australia. The employer needs to be specifically in Australia who can sponsor you. So we'll discuss on that pathway as well. So minimum requirement is at least to have 2 years of full-time work experience post-study. And if you wanted to go with 186, then you have to work out with the 3 years full-time experience and you must have an Australian employer. Family program is there. So obviously if you have partners who are in Australia, they can sponsor you as a partner visa. And the last but not the least, there are investor and business programs, which is also very exciting these days because right now most of the states in Australia are asking those who are doing business under the stamp that science, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine. So those who are part of these industries and doing their own businesses, they can also be a part of investor and business program. Specifically, Victoria has recently come up with the STEM business programs. So we'll discuss on that one as well. So this is the flow chart. If you can see, obviously, if you are a graduate here in Australia, then probably you have to come up with this flow chart. So student visa, then probably once you have a student visa done, you can apply for TR, that's called temporary residency 485. That gives you a 2 years visa to stay in Australia and meet the point testing. Then again, training visa 407, 408, that's another option. You can always have it. But for the training visa, you must have an Australian employer. So once you are in Australia, obviously it's going to be quite easier for you to find an employer who can give you a training visa. Then the another option you have is the 482, which I spoken earlier. You need minimum 2 years full-time experience post-study, and you must have an Australian employer. This can be applied while you're onshore or offshore. So onshore means those who are in Australia, offshore means those who are right now overseas in any part of the world. If you have 2 years of experience, if you're an Australian employer, you can straight away apply for the permanent residency or 482 sponsorship visa. Then journal skill migration, that's a point testing visa surplus. We will be discussing about journal skill migration in very detail in next upcoming upcoming slides. Then again, employer permanent visa requires to have 3 years of full time. And then again, you must need to have an Australian employer. Partner visa and regional sponsored visa are another part of the family sponsorships, and those who have a partner who, whether he or she is Australian citizen or PR, they can also sponsor you to be an Australian permanent resident. Either you're offshore or onshore, doesn't matter much. Now, journal skill migration. There are a couple of subclasses in journal skill migration. The first is 189, that's the skill independent visa. Unfortunately, at the moment, Australian immigration is not inviting much on 189. So even though if you have maximum points like 100 or 200, still you won't be able to get an invite because they have literally stopped giving invitations. The most common visa subclasses these days where we are getting invitations are subclass 190 and 491. So for instance, if you've been nominated by one of the state, then you can go with a 190. if you're nominated by a regional area of that state, then you can go with a 491. We will be coming to discuss about each of the state requirement and how you can apply. But the general and the more basic requirements which everyone needs to meet is you must have at least an age of 44. If you turn 45, then you cannot apply for general skill migration. Then you must have a positive skill assessment. Skill assessment, what we're talking about, the Engineers Australia, which we have discussed in last couple of slides. Then you minimum require at least 6 each in IELTS or 50 each in PTE. That's called Pearson Test of English. That is very easy these days because lots of people who are even in Pakistan, Dubai, elsewhere in Gulf countries, or even in Australia, you can do a PTE test that gives you the results within 1 day or maximum couple of hours, rather than you wait for another 14 days for the IELTS result to come. So pretty quick and quite easier to get the scores as well. So you can dig on this one, how to go with the PT exams. Now 65 minimum points required and expression of interest. So minimum 65 points. How are we going to calculate 65 points? We'll discuss in due course. And then once you meet all 4 requirements of above, then you need to lodge an expression of interest. It's an online application that needs to be submitted once you meet those all 4 above requirements. Pretty easy application to submit, but you can also hire a registered migration agent to help you out lodging the EOI. Now, general skill migration, the first, which I told you that at the moment they are not inviting. What the requirements of that is, occupation must be in MLTSSL list. So it's called the medium to long-term skill list, which has somewhere around 190 to 200 occupations. So if you wanted to be invited at 189, which is not coming up these days, still you need to part of those 200 occupations. For this visa, you don't need any state or territory sponsorship. Can live anywhere in Australia after the approval. The problem, as I told you, it's a long queue and few invitation, but these days they are not even inviting. So quite, we are not very focusing on these this subclasses 189 as of now. Now the most important ones which we are here, it's 190 and 491. 190 is a direct skill permanent residency application being sponsored by state. Whereas 491 is a provisional permanent residence, where once you get this visa, you need to meet 3 years of living and working in a designated or regional Australia requirement that we'll discuss in due course. And again, as we said, it's a state nomination visa, so you must need to nominate. The state needs to be nominated. You need to be nominated by the state. Now, general skill migration. Subclass 491, it's a valid visa. You get it once you get an approval for 5 years. It leads to a direct permanent residency after meeting the regional area 3 years living and work requirement. So once you get 491, you have to stay and live in a designated or regional area for 3 years. Minimum salary what you need to earn is 53,900. That's post grant requirements I'm talking about, not to get the visa. Then your occupation needs to be in a MSO list. That is the pre-requirement, and then your state needs to be nominated. Now let's go one by one to the state sponsorships requirements and options. So we'll first touch NT, and then we'll go further with other states and territories we have it remaining. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask me right now, because there were lots of information we have shared. If you can just put on the chat box, you need to ask any question, I can unmute you. You can ask me directly, or you can write on the chat. It's completely up to you. So I'll give you the next 5 minutes to ask any questions. Otherwise, we'll proceed with the next slide. All righty, so Salman has a question.
Anil, I've got a question, probably that may be they've got basically a couple of questions. And you've already touched base on these ones. So, in your opinion, you recommend PTE over TOEFL and IELTS as you get a quick result. So if you don't meet the criteria, and so you can quickly book your second test, and how is the difficulty level between the three different testing boards for this English? Is that PTE comparatively easier compared to IELTS and TOEFL? And my second question would be, as we know, as the time moves on, the permanent residency requirements are getting tougher and tougher. So there are some people who would be here, and some are planning to move to Australia. So the one who are planning to move to Australia could be with experience or freshly graduate. So what would be your recommendation to them to come as a permanent residency or have some temporary visa? Or would you prefer them to adopt a part of a student visa and invest a big amount of money and maybe wait 2 years, and there's a chance or risk that laws may change in those 2 years? So given current situation, what would be your sort of a recommendation if they have to choose between the two parts?
Sure. So I'll come up with the first question you have asked regarding IELTS and PTE. So generally what we have observed, or what my clients normally do, we are pushing them to do the PTE, because IELTS is the most conventional method of getting the English test, but you won't get much results out of it. So we have seen people who have done PTE and IELTS. IELTS generally, if they have got 6 each, in PT they might have achieved 7 each in IELTS. So that is 65 each in PT. So generally, whatever the scores you're eyeing, you're generally getting more better results in the PT. So that's where PT is fair bit easier than compared to IELTS. Now for the PT, obviously it's a computer-based test, so you need to make sure that you practice on computers. We do give PT coaching as well. We have an online PT portal that's called pteclasses.online, where you can practice for free. It's one of the easiest tests, what I believe, compared to IELTS and TOEFL. And as I told you, probably the results are quicker as well, as being a computerized test. So you should go with the PT and see how things go. Lots of people do still believe that IELTS is a bit easier to give compared to PT, because ultimately they are more comfortable putting everything in, through the hand, and so how the IELTS works out. So lots of people do take IELTS easier, but compared to the scoring, and obviously being to specifically asking about the permanent residency pathway, then I would suggest you to go with the PT. That gives more leverage you to have another test book as early as if you won't get the the PT results. Otherwise, waiting for 14 days for IELTS is going to be too much. Now the second question which you have asked me, that which is the better pathway. So at the moment, keeping the fact that the permanent residency for Australia is a bit tougher these days, there are lots of options would come, and we will be discussing that one in our upcoming slides, at what states have which requirements. So generally, maybe after 6-7 months, when the border situation would be better, then these all states will pretty much come up with the same, the criteria. So that makes life easier for those who already have good work experience, and they feel like that, they're meeting those requirements, then they can apply. Now, at the moment, we cannot speculate that what would be the best profile, but yes, those who have experience would get much priority rather than those who are being a recent graduate, because recent graduate, the issue is that you don't have any ample experience to meet the state requirements, whereas state do require minimum 3 years to 5 years experience, which can only be achieved if you have worked. Now, so hope I have given you answer, Salman, but obviously once we have more, once I'll go through a few more slides, then you would have a better idea what I'm talking about. And then at the end, we'll discuss on that one as well. Now, Shahryar has asked me what would be the suggested, what would you suggest now to pursue a 49190? Let's say for next 1 or 1.5 years. Okay. So Shahryar, my suggestion would be to grab whatever the subclass you may be eligible for. Right now, things are quite tough, especially in terms of the state requirements as well. So lots of people have got the 491 invitation. So we recommending them, or we suggesting them to look for a 491 if they have got the invitation. But say if the down the line, if you are very confident that you can grab 190, then always a 190 would be a first choice. In any day you ask me which one is the better, obviously 190 is better. But if you want to keep yourself in Australia and there is no 190 options available, then 491 would be also an ideal scenario, because in any case, see, you have to work. So getting 53,900 a year would not be an issue compared to being an engineer. Or maybe if you work XYZ, whatever work you're doing is minimum, the salary threshold here in Australia is above 53 to 55,000 a year. So that's you're normally meeting it. So I don't think so that would be any issues. The next question is from Salman Khan. So we'll take this one and then we'll go with the 10 state sponsorship options. So I have Salman Khan asking, I have more than 5 years of experience and age is below 33. What would be the recommended visa type? Salman, are you onshore or offshore? Are you currently in Australia or are you overseas? If you can just put that on the chat so it would be easier for me to answer. All right. So Salman is overseas. Salman, the good part is your age is below 33, which is basically a very ideal age between 25 to 33, where you get the maximum points. Gladly, you have 5 years of experience. My visa type, again, I'll recommend you to go with 190 or 491, whatever comes into your plate. At the moment, all states in Australia, they have not inviting overseas applicants. But right now here, what we are here together is to come up with, a solution that what we need to plan, say after 6 months or 7 months. That's what we are here to discuss and achieve. So being your experience and everything, I would suggest that you may get an opportunity to apply for 190. Either in Northern Territory state or maybe most probably the New South Wales, because New South Wales is the most biggest state and they have the biggest lot of the 190 quota in the whole year. Now, in terms of the engineering, so we also need to be very specific which engineering you have, which engineering experience you have it. For instance, if you are a civil engineer or maybe electrical engineer, or a telecom engineers, these engineerings are in very high demands. So most of the states do prefer these engineers. So they generally have, every year they publish the list. You need to go through the list and see what the specific requirements are, and then you need to apply. But overall, in a generic, your profile is good enough to go with the 190. So I'll quickly take Shoaib Qureshi's question, and then I'll go further about the Northern Territory requirements. So I'm 33 years old, civil engineer with 10 years of working experience in Pakistan. Right now, my IELTS expired last year. I had 8 band score. Sure, very good profile. I must say, you have achieved 8 each in IELTS as well. I would suggest to wait for, say, couple of months. As soon as the state sponsorship is going to open, your profile is pretty good to apply for either Victoria, Northern Territory, or New South Wales. And even the South Australia also have civil engineer, but they are not at the moment inviting any offshore applicants. But meanwhile, what you can do, you can have your skill assessment done and make sure your EOI has been lodged. No matter if they're not inviting, but you can still lodge an EOI. That makes you far, better position into the queue rather than you do an EOI which has a later date of effect, which might have a lesser chance to get you invite, or maybe it delays a lot. So make sure you lodge your EY. Now, Tariq Aziz has asked for a global talent. Tariq, we'll be discussing about the global talent at the end of our presentation. So if you have any specific question regarding global talent, I'm more than happy to answer on that one as well. All right, so let's start with the Northern Territory state sponsorship and options. Why I'm giving you these options? Because this will give an idea that what's coming in next 6 to 8 months whenever they're gonna open up the state sponsorships for overseas applicants. So 190 requires for students you require to complete at least 6 months of your studies. 6 months of your resident in NT and must have at least finished 2 years of study in Northern Territory. For overseas applicant, you don't need to meet the study requirement. Minimum you require to have at least an engineering qualification. You must have a high prospect of getting a job in NT and then you can apply. This slide is specifically for those who are living in NT and are on a student visa as of now, because we're talking about those who are Australian graduates wanted to apply for 491 and 190. So pretty much straightforward. You need to study 2 years and have minimum 6 months of visa left. You can apply for 491 190. Now for 491, again, pretty much the same requirement. You must be in an MLTSL list. Skill assessment needs to be there. You minimum have to have 65 points. And then the more points you have it, the state might invite you. Say, for instance, 2 people on 65 points. They will see your experience on the first hand. But again, if the person is 70 points and you have 65 points, 70% pointer person will get the first invite rather than going with the 65 pointer. Those are already in Australia. The main strategy would be to at least have 3 months visa left on their student visas. Must have ample time to wait for the state nomination. Those who are overseas, you don't need too much wait for anything, specifically in terms of visa conditions. So then you just need to lodge an EOI and a state sponsorship application, and state will then nominate you in their due course. Generally, every state takes 30 to 60 days to invite. So as soon as you lodge an application, they may take up to 60 days to invite you. If it's going more than that, then you have to follow up with the state. You need to email the state, or you need to call them if you're in Australia, or you can ask your migration agent to call on your behalf to these states. Now for the Northern Territory requirements for the graduates, both subclass 190 and 491, onshore applicants only living in NT. As I told you, at the moment, they're only inviting to NT those who are onshore. Interstate applications are, accepting in a limited circumstances, but obviously they are not doing it. 2-year study requirement, and again, the same points which we have discussed already, so I won't be touching much of the NT as of now. Now, once this much pretty much for the NT graduates, I believe that we don't have many, clients who are at the moment onshore. Most of, I think, our audiences are offshore, but I'm touch basing for those, for instance, their brothers and sisters are in Australia and they're really looking, or they're looking for their siblings or themselves to come for a study visa. Then probably these points would be eligible in your as per your profile. You can apply based on a study pathway. So study gives you a leverage to apply because they have a graduate list where you need to just do the 2 years of study, get the skill assessment done, and then straight away apply for either 491, 190, whatever the subclass are open that time. Now, all right, so that's pretty much for the graduates. Now, if you have any questions regarding NT, you can ask me, because this slide was specifically, we have, designed for those who are already graduates in Australia. But since, say, you are overseas, obviously you might have more questions. So you can ask regarding NT, and I'm more than happy to answer. Then I'll go to the South Australia. All right. So seems like we are pretty happy with the NT one. All right. So my question with all of you who are listening to me, who's going to tell me which city is the capital for Northern Territory, if anybody knows? except Salman. Perfect. So big round of applause for Sayed Kareem. He has perfectly answered Darwin. So Darwin is the state. The city. Darwin is a beautiful city. I've been there for say 4 to 5 times now. My few of the best friends are in Darwin as well. Beautiful city. Again, there are lots of scope in Darwin specifically for civil engineers and electrical engineers. So if you're part of those engineering, then you can also look for the anti-state sponsorship as well. Now let's go to the state sponsorship options for South Australia, especially for the graduates. But these are pretty much the same requirements for the overseas applicant except the study part. So I'll run through that one quite easily. South Australia have the longest list along with the Northern Territory. What we can do, we can make this webinar more interactive. I'll just run through the Northern Territory and other states websites to you that give you a better understanding of what exactly I'm talking about and what requirements they do have it currently, and then we'll run through the website as well. Yes, Shariar, I have just turned off the screen share. I'll just put it on quickly. Just putting up the website as of now. Just give me a sec. Alrighty. So hope everybody can see this website. That's the South Australia State Sponsorship website. And what I need to show you here is the South Australia Skill Occupation List. They have last week announced this list, and what they have given is the list of occupations here which they will be nominating in 2021 and 2022. So if you can see, there is a big list here which has lots of engineering occupations here as well, like engineering manager, production managers, and lots of other engineers are here. If I can just run through the filter. Yeah. So if you can see, lots of engineers, even most of the engineers are there. So they will be inviting these. Now, what the issue is at the moment, they're not inviting anybody from offshore. So if you can run through their requirements, if you can see at the moment, they said offshore currently unavailable. But generally what the requirements are to at least have 12 months of experience offshore, or maybe in some of the engineering, they may ask for 3 years. And for the engineering manager, they may ask for 5 years. Apart from that, pretty much the generic, the eligibility criteria, they have it. Also, they would be requiring minimum 7 each in IELTS. So if you have 7 each in IELTS, then it would be easier for you to meet the state requirements for South Australia. So if you're planning to lodge an application in next, say, 6 to 8 months, as soon as the border opens, then South Australia is also an ideal, state where you can apply. And, the South Australian capital is Adelaide. So very famous city, and probably we all know that most of the cricket matches happens in Adelaide as well. Last World Cup where Pakistan lost to India was also in Adelaide, South Australia. So pretty good city, pretty vibrant, and I believe that you should also look for South Australia in near future. So we'll get back to the slides again. So that was for the South Australia. Now let's get to the other state. So those who are onshore, they wanted to apply, they still have some waivers. So for instance, if you are part of, you have done the study in South Australia, or you're still right now in South Australia, if you don't have an engineering job and recently you have done any of the masters or bachelors out there along with the full skill assessment, then only you need to live and work any occupation in a regional South Australia for 12 months. That will waive off all the requirements, and they ultimately can give you a 491. So there are lots of waivers for those who are onshore. So for instance, lots of people are not meeting the requirement. They wanted to come to study Australia. South Australia can be one of the options if you wanted to come to study and then go with the permanent residency pathway. So as I told you, there are work experience waivers where you have to live 12 months in outer regional South Australia and work in any occupations. It can be a part-time 20 hours. So that's pretty much it, what it says in the skilled work experience waivers. So there is also in high performing graduates where if you have certain amount of GPA, then you can also can apply for South Australia state sponsorship. But again, this is for South Australian graduates, not for overseas. So I'll quickly wrap up this slide because that's not much into this one for overseas applicants. So that's for South Australia. Now the other state we have is the Queensland. So generally Queensland would have two again streams, 491 and 190. Queensland generally are very good state for the engineers, but another catch here is that Queensland do ask for an NER. That's called National Engineering Register, which is the part of Engineers Australia, where once you get the skill assessment, then you need to apply for as a membership at the Engineering Register in Australia. If you are not an NER, then they would not be able to invite you. For NER, the requirement is that you must have at least 5 years of experience and it has to be ongoing. They would be taking a formal interview with you. They will be calling you. So if you remember, we have run through the Engineers Australia skill assessment process. So that would be the first stage. Once we get through the skill assessment, then we need to apply for NER. That's a separate application where they generally see your 5 years of experience. You must have ongoing experience going on. You must have 2 referees. 2 referees can be your friends, engineers, anyone. And they are also needs to be working as an engineer or maybe a relevant engineering, not within your company, but can be any company, but there must be engineers, those 2 referees. So NER is a bit lengthier process. It may take somewhere around 3 to 4 months to complete the NER process. So you need to have at least, some sort of a time in order to ensure that you have that patience to complete the NER. Right. Sure, Shahryar, I'll definitely run through the calculator for you as well. Those who really wanted to know how to get that 65 points, I'll run through the calculator for you. No issues at all. So Queensland, I told you, again, get back to the Queensland. So NER is important. If anybody have any questions regarding NER, they can ask me. Otherwise, I'll go to the other state. There might be lots of concerns or confusions still regarding the process. Every case is different and we can discuss your case in, either with the one-to-one Zoom meeting in next couple of weeks as well, or I'll run through another, session where I can grab all your questions and run through those FAQs sessions, some sort of a session where we can have more questions answered. But if you have anything regarding NER, let me know. If not, then we'll run through the other states. So Queensland, which as I told you for the NER, but I'll just run through a few of the information which they recently been inviting lots of, the prospective clients who are onshore. So generally they require those who are working in a critical sector as of now, those who are right now in Australia. So if you're part of these industries like medical technology, engineering, civil infrastructure, supply chain, telecommunication, television production. So these all industries, they are really wanted people. Those who are working in these industries can apply. So you can see lots of engineering, target sectors are there as well. So most probably they will replicate similar to offshore applicants as well. So great chance for us to apply for Queensland later down the line. Then for 190, there is one, requirement that you at least need to have 80 points as of now. How the point testing works, we'll definitely discuss on this one, as one of your colleagues have requested me to run through the calculator. So we'll discuss on that one as well. Now, there is another subclass which can be very much lucrative for those who are onshore. That is the small business operating subclass 491, where if the person is in Queensland and that person is running a business which has a value of 100k Australian dollars, they can also apply for this subclass. You need to at least run that business for 6 months and you must have a full working rights. Though this is option for those who are onshore and struggling for the permanent residency pathway and have minimum 65 points, they can go with this subclass as well. Now, New South Wales state sponsorship. This is New South Wales, as you know, Sydney is one of the one of the largest city of the Australia, most vibrant one. New South Wales have pretty much straightforward requirements. They generally put up the list of 30 to 40 occupations every year. Most of their list has engineers. For offshore, what their proposed eligibility criteria is that you must have at least 5 years of experience overseas. If you have that one and you fall under one of the 30 occupation list they have proposed, obviously they haven't published as of now for offshore, but as soon as they open up, if you have 5 years experience, you can straight away apply for New South Wales 190. Minimum point requires only 65. So they can take the EYs if you have 65 points. But again, if you have more points, they will obviously give you more priority compared to those who are on minimum threshold of 65 points. So that is what I've run through these slides as well. If anybody needs these slides, I can send a newsletter at the end of our webinar. So everybody have a share of these slides to run through if they have any friends and family who are living in the New South Wales and meeting one of these requirements. So these are the 42 occupations which last year they have nominated. So if you can see, first 15 are all engineers, even first 16. So that's exciting. So most of them are engineering managers, geotechnical engineers, civil engineers, transport engineer, industrial engineer, mechanical. So you can name it. Most of us, specifically those who are from subcontinent like Pakistan, mainly we do these engineerings or maybe we are working in these industries. So you can see there are lots of prospect out there. Specifically in terms of New South Wales class 190. But the only constraint or drawback at the moment is Australia is closed for offshore. As soon as they open up, then great opportunity. Now, for 491, at the moment, those who are living and working in New South Wales, they have opened their stream. Stream 2 is for those who have studied there. So if you have studied for 2 years, still you meet the requirement, but your occupation needs to be in that list which I have shown you. Then again, the third stream is the New South Wales, working and living New South Wales, but they haven't studied, but they must need to have a job offer in New South Wales. This is the one which I was talking about. The offshore applicants, if you're residing outside Australia, you must have a skill assessment. Your nominated occupation needs to be in that list, and you must have at least 5 years of experience. Minimum requirement is only 65 points. So one of a very good states where offshore engineers with such kind of experience can apply. Then again, there is another stream which is called the family ties. If you have a family, first blood only, they are in New South Wales, they can also sponsor you for 491 visa. Generally, all families can give you additional 50 points toward the point testing. So very good, one of the good streams, but obviously you must need to have siblings or maybe a first blood father, mother, or grandfather or grandparents out there in Australia. Now, Victoria state sponsorship. So any questions regarding New South Wales, feel free to ask. If you need to ask by end of the session, you can put the answer the questions here right now as well. I'm more than happy if I get time, I can give you the answers in between as well. All right, so let's go with the Victoria one. So Victoria 491, again, those who are living in Victoria as of now can apply for 491. They are only inviting those who are part of these highly skilled target sectors. So for instance, if you are part of health, medical research, life sciences, digital sciences, agriculture, advanced manufacturing, renewable energy, then you can apply for 491. Pretty much the same requirement for 190 as well. You need to be a part of these industries. So if you're working and living in Victoria in these industries, you can straight away apply for 190. They have recently opened up an ROI that is called the registration of interest. You can straight away apply. Then Western Australia state sponsorship. So for the Western Australia state sponsorship, recently they for last 1.5 years they were only limited to graduate list, where they were only inviting to graduates, but now they have put up a schedule 2 right now only for onshore. Again, for schedule 2 they have put all the occupations, all the engineering occupations. So which is again one of the good states we can look for, but only the drawback of Western Australia, they require to have the job offer or employment contract of 12 months. Ultimately, as you know, being offshore people or being living in overseas, it's quite tough to get a job contract in Australia, especially if you're not in Australia or if you're not a permanent resident. So Western Australia would be very difficult for those who really wanted to apply for Western Australia. They need to look for some other states. So these are the basic requirements. So I'll send you the slides. For the graduates, obviously you must need to study 2 years in Western Australia in order to meet the requirements. And then again, for Western Australia graduate itself, you also need to have a job offer. Now, Tasmania state sponsorship. Tasmania, one of good states. They have invited somewhere around 2,500 overseas, the applicants for 491 and 190 last year. Tasmania had the highest number of overseas sponsorships. So Tasmania is one of the states you can look for. At the moment, again, Tasmania is also not offering, but most of the requirements are similar to having 3 to 5 years of experience. Minimum you require 7 each or 65 in PTE. These are the 2 important requirements. And now also Tasmania also asks you to go with the NER. NER we already discussed. So this is where you have to be specifically give at least 4 to 5 months to process the NER. All right, so Tasmania state sponsorship, that is for those who are recent graduates in Tasmania. They either need to study 1 year to apply for 491. If they go for 190, then they need to study 2 years. But pretty much, then again, the basic requirements are same, that you must have a skill assessment and all those stuff. ACT have the least number of sponsorships for overseas and onshore applicants. ACT is also called Australian Capital Territory. The main city is Canberra, probably the capital city of Australia, and they have the least number of sponsorships available. So generally they don't have much engineers. They are inviting nurses, IT professionals, few of the trade qualifications like plumbing and commercial cookery people. So not a very good state to apply for a overseas sponsorship. But again, one of the options are there. At the moment, again, they are not inviting any overseas applicant. Again, another drawback for the ACT is that they have their own matrix. So even though if you're meeting the state, the Department of Home Affairs or Australian Immigration 65 points minimum requirement, you also need to meet their matrix points as well. And their matrix point 65 is quite tough to get it. You must be in a critical list of ACT. Now the issue is the critical list changes every 3 months. So even though we are not sure which occupation would come when, and when straight away they're going to remove that up. So not a good state to apply as of now, and we don't recommend that being a migration agents. All right. So now we'll run through. If you have any questions, you can ask specifically, not for Western Australia, for any of the states. So that was the whole soul of all our states' requirements and how to go further. Now, if you have any questions, I'll just turn on the mics. So if you really wanted to ask, you can ask us directly. If you can raise hand, it's going to be easier for me to then unmute your mics, and then we'll take questions one by one. All right. So meanwhile, whoever has put up their questions on the chat box, I'll just answer to those first, and then we'll take the more questions if you may have it, and then I'll run through the points calculator and step-by-step process of applying for the permanent residency once again. All right. So one of the participants has asked that. Okay, so we'll run through that one. It's again the Sharia one. Brother in Sydney can help. Okay, so one of the participants, I think Shoaib want to ask. I can just unmute him. Yes, Shoaib, if you can unmute. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah. So your voice is very slow. If you can speak a bit louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, sure.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, what are the options for offshore? I just joined midway. Probably have discussed something like that. What are the options for offshore applicants, engineers, and also if there are any future prospects? So how soon can we, if there's nothing open right now, how soon can we expect something for offshore applicants?
All right. We, in terms of the prospect, they're really, great prospect in next 6 to 7 months. Borders, what we have heard, it's will be opening after the elections. That's going to be in April 2022 or May 2022. So by that time, what we are suggesting to most of the engineers who are overseas, they start doing their skill assessments. They can start doing their English proficiency test. For instance, if they have achieved 6 each, try for 7 each. If you have achieved 7 each, try for 8 each. The more points you have it, the more chance you have it to get through any of the state sponsorship, or maybe down the line if they open up the 189. So prospects are really good. Now, obviously, to plan, as I told you, skill assessment requires, the fastest one can be done in 26 days, but there are lots of applications for Engineer Australia. They may lead up to 3 months to finish up the skill assessment. So generally, you need 7 to 8 months in order to meet the prerequisite of the skill visas. So if you start planning from now onward, it's going to be really good for you. Now, as I told you, or if you have joined from the midway, there would be a couple of states which can give you sponsorships if you have at least 5 years of experience, minimum 7 each in IELTS, and have at least minimum 65 points. Then New South Wales is a good option. Queensland State is a good option. Tasmania would be a good option, and South Australia would be a good option. So these all 4 states would have good prospect for most of the engineering. All right. So now let's take the other question. So Usama has asked for a question. I'll run through the Usama's question, and if Usama needs to, use his mic, he's more welcome to do it. So I have done BE Electronics Engineering and Electronics under the pro rata list. So can you tell us the difference between occupations of pro rata and non pro rata occupations in terms of chances of getting 491? And Shariar is asking that I missed the point about the Western Australia Court. For those who graduated with NIT like 2009, do they fall under Western Australia and exempt from CDR? Okay. So Usama, if you have any other questions, apart from the one you have already written, you can ask me directly, and then I'll answer completely.
No, this is the only one I would like to ask.
Okay. All right. So, Osama, like for those who are pretty new with the Australian immigration, I'll just go with what exactly the pro rata and non pro rata is. Immigration is divided few occupations to pro rata and non pro rata. Pro rata occupations require very high points, and non pro rata occupations don't require very high points. But these non pro rata and pro rata is only for 189 subclass. So those who have joined us a bit later, there were three subclasses we were discussing earlier. First was 189. That's called the direct permanent residency based on the point testing. For the point testing, you require pro rata and non pro rata. So if you're under a pro rata, it's going to be very difficult to get an invite. And as we have discussed in starting of our, the presentation, that Australian immigration is not inviting anyone on 189. So that pro rata and non pro rata just get into the vein. Now, for 190 and 491, there is no pro rata and non pro rata. If you meet the state requirement, which I told you generally would have 5 years of experience, 7 each, few of the state require NER, then technically you're meeting the requirement. You just need to lodge an EOI along with the state nomination application if they have that option to do it. Otherwise, they normally invite through EOI, and then you just need to wait. They generally take 60 days to invite you. So as soon as you get an invitation, you can lodge a visa application. So this is how it works. So Osama, hope if I have answered your query. So technically you don't need to worry about the pro rata and non pro rata. Okay, so now for Sharia is asking for how we gonna know whether we are falling under the Washington Accord or not. So Sharia, if you can put your qualification, what you have done at NED, and badge number you have already have given. So I need an intake date. So if you have passed in 2009, I believe your intake was 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Now I need an exact qualification name, and then what I'll do, I'll run through one of the drill which let you know that whether you fall under Washington Accord or not. That will give you a very good opportunity to give the same learning to new graduates or those who that they fall under that this the Washington Accord. So I'll stop my the presentation slide. I'll just put you to my browser and we'll run through how to check the accreditation. All right, so I'll just put on my desktop now. So if you can see, if I go to PEC, all right. So here, everybody can see my screen. Yes, please just put yes or no on the chat box, so at least I know we are on the same page. All right. So now I'll just run to the PEC website, so at least you know what I'm exactly trying to say. So there are two streams for PEC. One is called the programs aggregated under level 1. The other ones are programs under aggregated level 2, sustainably equivalent to Washington Accord. So the under 2 level are the programs which are aggregated under the Washington Accord. So do not go to this one. Now PEC, quite funny, their website is quite funny. You can see it seems like this list is for program aggregated to level 1, but it's not the case. This is a hyperlink to their page. Right now, what the list is all about the Washington Accord. So I'll put this link to the chat box as well. So if anybody wants to copy paste and run through later down the line, they can do so. So now see, let's go to the NED University, which is in Sindh. So if you can see here, the list of the NED universities badges, which are the part of the Washington Accord. As you know, Washington, Pakistan has become Washington Accord last 3 to 4 years back. So the old, the alumni, like those who have passed in 2000, has started in 2004 or 5, would not be a part of Washington Accord. But those who have started in 2013, say civil engineers or badge from 2013 to 2014 or 2016 to 2017, they are the part of the aggregate courses. Similar to go with textile, urban, and all. So these all occupation the engineering are aggregated to Washington Accord. The good part is if you are part of Washington Accord, you get a work visa for 2 years as well. The only requirement of work visa is to have minimum IELTS of 6, no less than 5. You must not be a graduate more than 2 years. In last 2 years, you need to be graduate in last 2 years and have an IELTS of overall 6, no less than 5. That will lead you to the work visa 476. Also, you fall under the Washington Accord. Hope everybody has got the clear picture about the Washington Accord thing. All right, cool. So I'll just go to the slide, back to the slides again, and then I'll take the Tariq's question. All right. So Tariq is asking that I am at the final year of PhD here in Australia. Would it be a good apply to global talent visa in last 6 months or after completing PhD? What are the main requirements? Okay, wonderful, Tariq. So Tariq, if you can put which PhD you're doing it, because generally for the PhD they have 6 to 7 target sectors. So if you fall under one of the target, civil engineering, perfect. So Tariq, you are part of a STEM studies. Global talent visa, you meet the requirement if you are in the last 6 months of your PhD. So if you are in verge of completing your PhD and it's in the last 6 months, I would suggest you to apply as early as possible. The main requirement is to have a nominator. So whoever is your supervisor, or if you have anyone who has been doing really well in the industry as a civil engineer, they can be a nominator. If you have a company by whom you've been sponsored or you've been working, they can be a nominator as well. But the main requirement, that company or that supervisor needs to have been Australian permanent resident or citizen. So perfect. So Tariq, I think it's an ideal time to apply because you meet the perfect requirements. There are no other requirements for the global talent visa. You don't need to have a skill assessment. There is a age waiver as well. So no matter if you're 60, even 55, 60 years old can apply. Only the nominator needs to be an Australian citizen or PR. He needs to put that form. That's a 2-pager form for the nominator. If you've seen that one, you have to get him to sign that one, get his ID, get his resume. You need to ensure that the nominator has done good in his industry. Like he do have international publications or he's doing well with the civil engineering target industry. Should be all good. Any specific questions, you have my contact details, you have my email ID, you can send them across to me, but a very good prospect for you. Yeah. Usama is asking, my brother is in Melbourne and my mother-in-law in Kingaroy near Brisbane. All right, Usama, if your brother is in Melbourne, unfortunately he can't do much, because your brother needs to be in a designated or regional area. Melbourne itself, the greater Melbourne, is not a part of the regional or designated. Yeah, but Melbourne is very vast. If your brother lives in, say, Pakenham, or maybe where Salman's living, somewhere close to Clyde or somewhere, these are the part of designated areas. If your brother lives there, then obviously you can apply for family sponsorship 491. There is a huge queue for family sponsorship. They're inviting only those who have 100 or 105 points. But at least you have one backup option to apply. So if that is the case, then you should consult me one to one. I'll guide you through how to apply. But yes, the profile seems good if your brother or brother-in-law living in a designated or regional area. What I'll do it once, I'll send you the slide to our through our newsletter. I'll put the postcodes of the designated region areas for everyone, so they can go through that one. If you have the family members or first blood living in Australia, even the first cousins can also be the family sponsored as well. So the first cousins are fine, or first uncles or first aunties are fine. They can even give you 50 points, 15 points for the 491 family sponsorship. So we can run through your thing one to one along with your resume. All right, so Abdullah is asking if occupation is in the sole list of Western Australia, do we only need proficient English and 6 months job contract for 190 state nomination in Australia? Or we need 2 more points like superior English NATI? All right, so Abdullah, are you onshore or offshore? First, if you can just put that onto the chat. So Abdullah, if you can hear me, all right. So onshore completed studies, and you have done in Western Australia, Abdullah? Or all right, perfect. So if you are in a graduate list of Western Australia, so see Abdullah, there are 2 lists. So since you are in, sorry, beg your pardon. So if you are in Western Australia, you must know that they have recently published 2 lists. One is called the Schedule 2. The other one is called the graduate list. If you fall under the graduate list, then you just need to have 6 months of job contract. There is minimum requirement of being only on 65 to 70 points. Yes, as I told you last time, if similar to you, lots of people are on 70 points, they are onshore, have recently completed studies, have 6 months of job contract, then they may invite those who are on 75 points instead of those who are on 70 points. But yeah, more points leads to the better, proposition to get the state sponsorship. But the minimum requirements you're meeting. So try to grab more points in order to meet the graduate list requirement. Wonderful. All right. Those who have no idea what the NATI is, so NATI is similar to a PT test, but NATI is called the Credential Community Language Test, where if you speak Urdu, you need to give a test online that leads to another 5 additional points toward the permanent residency. That can be done anywhere around the world. So there is a body called NATI itself. If you go to their website, you can book the test. There is a specific course or maybe online studies. You need to do it in order to ensure that you pass the test, because the test is only for 7 minutes. It's generally you need to interpret Urdu to English and English to Urdu. So if you're really interested with the NATI, then you can also write me an email. I can send you some of the links in order to book the test and give the test. We also do NATI training at Think Higher. So if you really wanted to do training through Think Higher, I'm more than happy to help you out in that matter as well. Now, for NATI can be done from offshore, yes, from Pakistan, anywhere around the world. So even if you are in Far East Africa, you can do so. NATI is now an online test. You can stay at your home and give a NATI test. They have specifically designed an app onto the laptop. So normally they verify that nobody is in the room. They run through the cameras and then they start taking your test with a virtual supervisor, or you can say virtual examiner who takes your test. So hardly a 5 to 6 minutes test anybody can give. Now I'll run through the point testing. So I believe that I think who asked me this question? Shariar. Okay, so I'll run through the point testing and then I'll come to the Osama's question as well regarding his wife's MBBS. So I have another very good tip or very good, option for those who have done MBBS and not able to do an AMC test because it's pretty tough and very expensive as well. Then we have another options to go for as well. So I'll let you know about that one in due course. So let's run through the point testing first. So at least everybody knows what exactly the point testing is and how to at least have minimum 65 points, which we have spoken. All right. So before we run through the point testing, I'll just take 2 minutes of break. I'll run through a video, and after the video, we'll start the point testing thing, and then whatever the questions you may have it afterwards, you can ask me that one as well. So just give me a second. I'll just run that video for you guys.
The next myth we have is you will always get 20 points for superior English in all states.
Okay, so this is a kind of a myth, so I'll explain how it's kind of a myth. So it says you will always get 20 points for superior English in all state. So it's actually you will get 20 points superior points in English in the GSM visas. So GSM visa has a separate point testing system where you get 20 points for the superior English, whereas when it comes to the state, only the Canberra ACT state awards points for the English. Thanks.
So let's have a look on the next myth we have. No need of skill assessment for 485 TR visa.
Okay, this is a myth as well. So for 485 visa, as we all know, it's a very basic one. The 485 TR visa comes in two streams. The first one is a graduate stream and the other one is a post-study stream. And for the graduate stream, you need to have a skill assessment, and for post-study graduate stream, you don't need to have a skill assessment. So this one is a myth as well.
That's great. So let's have a look on the next one. English test is required for students for all the countries while migrating to Australia.
Well, this is also myth. English test is not required for many countries people who have studied more than 5 years in English in like countries such as Republic at Ireland, United Kingdom, US, New Zealand and Republic of South Africa.
I cannot get admission in certain course because I do not have senior secondary studies in the same field.
Well, Parama, I would say that this is again a myth. You can do a different course even if you don't have the secondary study in the same field. I would take my example here. When I was doing my bachelor's, it was in medical field, and now I just completed my networking master's. So you can do that. Your one subject should be matching, and then you can do these different courses.
Wow, that's great.
Alrighty, so we were just running through a few of the myths, which lots of people do have speculations that the English is required or some sort of experience is required. But in most of the cases where you're applying for a student visa, you don't require any English. But let's now run through the point testing, which we were discussing earlier. All right, so everybody can see my browser here. Yeah, if you can write just on the chat, it's going to be easier for me to understand. Okay, cool. So I'll run through this one and I'll just let you know how we calculate the points. It's basically specifically the 65 points we are talking about. So say if you have an age between 18 to 25, so that's the age bracket where you get 25 points. The maximum points you get it on 25 to 33 years old. So if you are 32 plus 364 days old, still you're able to get 30 points. As soon as you reach 33, you would have minus 5 points. Then it goes up to 39 years plus 364 days. So as soon as you reach 40, then you get another minus 10, leads to 15 points only. After 45, like 44 years plus 364 days, which we spoken, after that, you would not be eligible to apply for general skill migration. So no visa for those who are at least 45 years of age. Now, English requirements. So the competent English is called it 6 each in IELTS. So that's the mandatory requirement. 6 each won't give you any points. So it's normally 0 points for 6 each. Proficient English gives you 10 points. Proficient means 7 each. What I'll do right now, I'll just run through what are the functional, professional, and superior and all. So let's go to the superior proficient here. So if you can see 7 each in IELTS in all component, it can be general or academic, doesn't matter much. You get 10 points. Similar to these are the equivalent other test scores. For instance, PT you need at least 65 in each subset, that leads to another 10 points. There is also one test called OET, that is for mainly for doctors and nurses. If you're a medical background, then you can go with an OET test, but this test is only available for specific countries. If you get B in each of the 4 subset, you get 10 points. And then there is one called Cambridge Advanced Test, that's also called CAE, which is also available in Pakistan, specifically in Islamabad. If you achieve 185 in each of the tests, you also get 10 each. So that was basically the equivalency chart we have discussed. Superior means 8 each. So if you have achieved 79 plus in PT or 8 each in IELTS, can be academic or general, you get maximum 20 points. Now, skill employment, so they have divided into 2 parts. One is the outside Australia, the other one is in Australia. So if you have less than 3 years of experience outside Australia, you get 0 points. So minimum points for experience is minimum 3 years. Okay, so if you have 3 years of experience, you get 5 points. If you have 5 to 8 years of experience, then 10 points. So say 5 to 7 years plus 364 days give you 10 points. If you have 8 plus, then you get maximum 15 points. Somebody has asked me, if we must have 65 each in PT, then you earlier indicated 50 points each in PT. Can you elaborate? Okay, so 50 each gives you the minimum eligibility requirement, that is 6 each. If you get 65 each in PT, that's 7 each. So 50 each is equivalent to 6 each. 65 each equivalent to 7 each. All right. 50 each will not give you any points, 0 points. 65 each will give you 10 points. So that's the difference. Now, again, if you're in Australia, if you have less than 1 year experience, 0 points. Minimum, if you have 1 year to 3 years of experience, give you 5 points. More than 3 to 5 years, 10 points. 5 to 8 years can give you 15 points, and at least 8 years experience give you 20 points. But mostly the people, they fall under 3 to 5 years, not more than that onshore, because mostly those who have such kind of experience, they technically have got the permanent residency, or they have another pathways to apply for permanent residency. Now, that is a very interesting thing which I would like to tell you. Minimum 20 hours per week is considered to be full-time to the Department of Home Affairs. So if you have 20 hours per week, specifically those who are in Australia, if they're doing 20 hours per week, they consider to be full-time. And if they achieve up to 1 year, they can claim that 5 points as well. Okay, so that's the good part. If you are either offshore or onshore, but minimum 20 hours per week is required to consider to be full-time. Now, education, if you are doctorate, like Tariq inshallah will get PhD, so Tariq will get 20 points. Similar to any person who is doing PhD, finishes the PhD, get 20 points. It can be offshore, onshore, doesn't matter. So it's not like that you have to be onshore to get the PhD. You can have a PhD back in Pakistan, but that PhD has to be from an recognized university, or maybe a university which Everybody knows about that. Bachelor's give you 15 points. Diploma level studies, those who have, the associate diplomas or associate studies give, engineering back in Pakistan give 10 points. And any other recognized, qualification that is equivalent to diploma, advanced diploma, associate engineer give you 10 points as well. Now, these all studies, you must need to have a skill assessment, either a qualification assessment or a full skill assessment from Engineers Australia. Then only you would able to claim these points. For PhD, you don't need to do a PhD qualification assessment. So you can generally do a bachelor's one. And if you have done a PhD, then you can ultimately claim that additional 5 points directly towards the immigration. You don't need to assess yourself. Also, for these all points for skill employment, lots of people do a skill assessment from the specific engineering body. You don't require to do it. Again, if you have a qualification assessment, that is a full qualification assessment, then all the points you can claim directly to immigration. But for that, you must need to have all the proofs like the pay slips, bank statements, tax documents, your reference letter, experience letter, and the contract. If you don't have a contract, that's perfectly fine, but rest of the documents needs to have it. Then let's go to the special education. So now, if you study in Australia, and if studying into a STEM study, like science, technology, engineering, management, then you can able to claim additional 10 points, but that study needs to be either a master's degree by research or PhD. So on top of 20 points, you get another 10 points doing master research or PhD. So that's altogether very good, option to go for. All right. So for Australian skill employment, we simply select less than 1 year for option. So say if you have, Australian skill employment less than 1 year, then you won't be able to grab any points. So there are options when you're applying for expression interest where you can put the starting date and ending date. But say if you have less than 1 year of experience, you can still put in EY, but you won't be able to get any points. So putting information into the EY is not an issue, but the issue is that you won't be able to grab the points. Now, those who are studying in Australia have at least minimum 2 years of study have finished, they get additional 5 points. So you can imagine lots of points for those who are studying in Australia. Now, professional year program is another program which you normally do after your 2 years of study during the TER process. Generally, we call them 485 visas, or even those who are coming on 476 visa under Washington Accord from, we discuss about that visa. They can also do a professional program in Australia after coming in Australia, sorry. So the professional program can only be done in 3 streams: ICT, computing, that's pretty much the same, accounting and engineering. So lots of scope for engineers who really wanted to do this course. CCL is again the NAATI course we spoken about. So if you can see, this is the NAATI, NAATI. This is the body which takes the test. If you pass that, you'll get 5 points to that one. But you need to do a good practice to pass a NAATI. It's not a very easy test. You must have a very good command on your Urdu as well as in English in order to interpret the, the dialogues, what they normally play. Good part is NAATI is only an oral test. So you don't need to write anything. So it's not a written test. It's only an oral test for 5 to 7 minutes, maximum go up to 10 minutes. Now let's come to the partner points. So partner points, they have divided the partner points into 2 parts. One is called total partner points can be achieved, that is 10. But say you need to, they have divided into 2 different parts for the partner points. If your partner have minimum 6 each in IELTS, that's called the competent English, you will get 5 points. But your partner have a skill assessment, and that is under the skill occupation list, then you can get another 5 points as well. Altogether 10 points if you have competent English along with your partner have the skill assessment or qualification assessment done under the skill occupation list. So skill occupation list can be found on department website. You just need to write MLTSSL list for 189. You will find the skill occupation list that comprises of 200 occupations so far. So these are the all point testing generally to meet the 65 points criteria. Now, if you have any questions regarding this one, more than happy to answer. All right, so we'll take Alim's question. So I'm a mechanical engineer, age 34, working in Saudi Arabia for past 6 years, have overall production engineering experience for more than 13 years. Do you have any chance getting 19049 or any other best suited? Will IELTS score 7H will be enough? Yes, Alim, I believe if you have, gone through our, the earlier presentations for New South Wales and even for South Australia, based on your profile, you're meeting the requirements. Minimum points are 65, but for South Australia, you need to at least have up to 70 to 80 points, which as per your profile, you're meeting. So let's do 1 point testing based on Alim. So at least everybody can get an idea that how much points Alim has got it. Similar, you can put the same drill on your profile as well. So Alim is age 34. So if you can see here, he'll get 25 points because he falls under this bracket, 33 to 40. So Alim got 25 points for the age. Now he has 6 years of experience as a mechanical engineer. So 6 years will fall under 5 to 7 years for this bracket. So 10 points. So 25 plus 10 is equal to 35. Now, his age we have counted. English, he is saying that he'll get 7 each. So proficient English is called 7 each. So that gives him another 10 points. So 25 plus 10 plus 10, that comes to be 35, 45. Now, since he have got 6 years of experience, then we go to the education part. Since he have done engineering, I believe he has minimum done either a bachelor or master, that leads to another 15 points. So 45 plus 15, that comes out to be 60 points. 60 points is all good to apply for the state sponsorship 491. If Alim's partner gets 6 each, then he comes with 65 points. But 60 points are more than enough because 5 points is being granted by the state. So whichever state you apply, if you meet the requirement, they give you additional 5 points of the state as well. So altogether, it's going to be 65. That's what we needed. So that's how we calculate the points calculator. Any question you may have, you can ask me. All right. So Sharia is asking which option we need to select a case in case of your partner just don't fulfill the requirement, or you are saying that English must be spouse must have to get. All right. So Sharia partner points are not mandatory. For instance, if you get 8 each, you get 20 points. So ultimately you have met the minimum threshold. You go up to 75 to 80 points based on your own criteria. All right, so then partner points are not mandatory. But yeah, if you want to increase your points, then your partner needs to get 6 each along with the skill assessment. Now, lots of qualifications do require skill assessment. Sorry, lots of qualification skill assessment do require to have minimum 7 each in order to get the qualification or skill assessment. Then obviously your partner needs to have 7 each. But for instance, engineers Australia requires you to have at least 6 each. So your partner is an engineer, she have 6 each. She can also do her CDR. Ultimately, your partner can give you 10 points. Similar with other occupations, if your partner is an IT profession, she requires 2 years of experience along with the bachelor's. Don't require any English for the skill assessment. So you get 5 points if your partner meets the IT requirements. Then on top, she needs to get 6 each in order to have more 5 points. So altogether 10 points. But as I told you, partner points are not mandatory. So even though if you're not claiming partner points or your partner is not confident enough, fair enough. You don't need to drag down to the partner points in general. All right, now let's go to the so if Aleem, yes, if your partner, obviously MBBS would not be an ideal option because you need to do AMC and all those stuff. So it's better your partner can get 6 each and give you 5 additional points. Now, those who have wives who are MBBS or those partners are MBBS, we have a very good option and they can be a main applicant as well. Now, how? I'll give you a very important tip today. You need to then obviously run through that one and see whether you would be eligible or not. Generally, there is one occupation in the skill occupation list that is called primary health organization manager. So for instance, if your wife has done or your partner has done MBBS, but she has an experience of 4 to 5 years or 6 years running a clinic. So running a clinic means that she is a primary health organization manager, or maybe she's a supervisor, or she is in charge of the clinic or the hospital, one of the departments. So then she can be a primary health organization manager. Primary health organization manager, the skill assessment is being done by VETASYS. That's another body. It doesn't goes to the Australian Medical Council, but it goes to the VETASYS. VETASYS is only required to have at least 1 year of post-study experience as a primary health organization manager along with the MBBS. So that leads to another opportunity to apply for a skill assessment, being an MBBS. But again, as I told you, you need to have a primary health organization manager experience for minimum 1 year. So those who have the clinics or have good resources where you can grab 1 year experience as a organization manager for that clinic, or maybe an health organization, or maybe they're working under any NGO where they have a health sector or your health department, then this is a golden opportunity for them. All right, so I believe that we have tried to answer all of the questions. Thank you so much, guys, for sorry for that. So thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this webinar. We really appreciate. Thank you so much, Salman, for giving this idea and getting us through in a very quick and turnaround time. And I'm very happy that we have this kind of audience, like, which are quite interesting to go for. So I'll have also taken a snapshot of everyone. So at least it would be, we will be putting up into our newsletter. Thank you so much. All right, so Usama has one question. Can the family members living in remote area give 15 points if they are? Yes, Usama. If your family members, as I told you, your siblings, father, mother, grandparents, obviously father, mother can't be possible. If they are permanent resident, technically you would be a permanent resident as well. But siblings or the first cousins, if they living in designated regional Australia, you can also apply for 491 family sponsorship. That is one of the options we can have. Yes, brother-in-law as well. Similar, same conditions apply to your wife as well. So if the wife has siblings or they have uncle, aunties, or first cousins, they can also give you 15 points no matter you are the main applicant. So wife if its wife is not the main applicant, you can be a main applicant and you can take points from your in-laws as well. All right, so that's another option or backup option. You have it. If the 189190491 state sponsorships are not working, at least you can lodge the COI as well. All right, so we'll wrap up now. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part. Again, I'm again thanking everybody who has participated in this wonderful event, and inshallah we'll try to do more events in near future. Thank you so much. Thanks, Salman. Have a good day. Cheers.